The call came while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office. My assistant Miranda's voice trembled when she patched it through. Larkin, it's the police department. They say it's urgent. My name is Larkin, and that call shattered my carefully structured world into a million jagged pieces. Miss Delaney? The officer's voice was gentle but firm. I'm sorry to inform you that your father, Robert Delaney, was involved in a serious accident this morning on Route 27. The pen I'd been holding clattered to my desk. Is he? I couldn't finish the sentence. I'm very sorry. He didn't survive the impact. The world tilted sideways. My father, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who showed me how to read financial statements when I was 12, who still called me princess, even though I was 32, was gone. Just like that. I don't remember ending the call or walking out of my office. The next thing I knew, my husband Nolan was rushing through the lobby of Delaney Industries, his usually perfectly styled hair slightly disheveled. He wrapped his arms around me, and I buried my face in his shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne. I left as soon as Miranda called, he whispered. What do you need? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was my father's attorney, Marcus. Larkin, I just heard. I know this is terrible timing, but there are some immediate matters we need to discuss regarding the company. I pulled away from Nolan, wiping my eyes.
Now.
The board is already calling. Your father was, well, he was the heart of this company. People are scared. Nolan squeezed my hand. You don't have to do this right now. But I did. Dad had built this company from nothing, pouring 30 years of his life into it. I couldn't let it falter, not even for a day of grief. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I told Marcus. Nolan's face darkened slightly. Let me come with you. You shouldn't be alone. I hesitated. Nolan had always been supportive of my career, but lately, I'd noticed a tension whenever the company came up. Maybe it was the stark contrast between his teacher's salary and my executive position. Or maybe it was his mother Vera's constant hints about family businesses belonging to the whole family. I think I need to handle this part alone, I said gently. He stepped back, jaw tightening. Of course. I'll go tell Mom and Sage the news. They'll want to help with arrangements. The way he said it made my skin prickle. My father had never quite warmed to Vera and Sage, though he'd been unfailingly polite. Something about them made him uneasy, though he never said why. In Marcus's office, surrounded by leather-bound law books and the faint smell of coffee, I learned that Dad had left me controlling interest in the company. The news shouldn't have surprised me. I'd been working alongside him for years, learning every aspect of the business. But somehow, it felt overwhelming. There's something else, Marcus said, sliding an envelope across his desk. Your father left this for you. He updated his will last month and insisted this be given to you after. I stared at the envelope, my name written in Dad's familiar scrawl. I couldn't bring myself to open it yet. My phone buzzed again, Nolan letting me know his family was gathering at our house. Mom's making calls, his text read. She says we need to discuss the future. The future. Such a simple word for such a complicated mess. I tucked the letter into my bag, thanked Marcus, and headed home. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father's death wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. I just didn't know yet how right I was. 3 days after Dad's funeral, I hosted a family dinner. It wasn't my idea. Vera insisted we needed to come together as family during this difficult time. I was still numb, moving through the motions of grief while trying to keep the company stable, but I couldn't refuse without seeming ungrateful. The tension started before the first course was even served. I was in the kitchen, plating the appetizers, when I overheard Vera's voice drift in from the dining room. It's such a shame Robert didn't have a son, she was saying. A family business needs a strong male presence. Not that Larkin isn't capable, of course, but… Mom. Nolan cut in, but his protest sounded weak. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. My best friend Marin, who'd come early to help, squeezed my shoulder. Don't let her get to you, she whispered. That's exactly what she wants. I forced a smile and carried the plates out. Sage, Nolan's sister, was sprawled in my father's chair, his favorite spot at the head of the table. She didn't move when I entered. "Something smells amazing," Sage chirped, scrolling through her phone. "Though I hope it's not too heavy. I'm trying this new diet." "You could move," I suggested quietly, nodding at Dad's chair. Sage blinked up at me, all innocence. "Oh, is this spot special?" "It was Dad's chair," Nolan explained, finally speaking up. "Maybe you could." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Sage jumped up, but her expression didn't match her words. "I'm just so comfortable here. It feels right, doesn't it? Like family." The room went quiet. I set down the plates with careful precision, fighting to keep my composure. Vera cleared her throat. "Speaking of family," she began, "Nolan and I were discussing the company earlier. You know, he has excellent management experience from running the science department at his school." "It's not quite the same thing," I said carefully. "But family is family," Vera pressed. "And now that you're in charge, surely you'll want trusted people around you? People who share your values." I caught Nolan's eye across the table. He looked away. "The company has a strong management team," I replied. "Dad built it carefully over decades." "Yes, but times change." Vera smiled, all teeth. "Fresh blood, new perspectives. And Sage has her business degree from an online college," Marin muttered under her breath. Sage shot her a glare. "I heard that." "Ladies," Nolan interrupted, "maybe we could talk about something else?" Larkin's still grieving. Of course," Vera patted my hand. "We just want to help, dear. Your father would have wanted the company to benefit the whole family." I pulled my hand away, standing abruptly. "I need to check on the main course." In the kitchen, I braced myself against the sink, breathing deeply. Marin followed me in. "They're vultures," she said flatly. "You see that, right?" "They're my family now," I replied, but the words felt hollow. "No, they're Nolan's family. And where was he when Vera was basically calling you incompetent? Or when Sage was deliberately provoking you?" I didn't answer. Through the kitchen door, I could hear Vera's voice again, lower now. "She's overwhelmed, poor thing. She'll need guidance. Strong guidance." "Mom, please," Nolan's voice, still weak, still unwilling to take a real stand. I reached into my pocket, touching Dad's unopened letter. I hadn't been able to read it yet, it felt too final. But standing there, listening to them plot and plan in my own home, I realized I couldn't put it off much longer. "The main course is going to burn," I said finally. "Screw the main course," Marin replied. "What are you going to do about them?" I straightened my shoulders, remembering how Dad used to say that respect had to be earned, not demanded. "First, we're going to serve dinner. Then tomorrow I'm going to show them exactly what kind of leader I can be." But as I carried out the main course, I caught Nolan watching me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between worry and calculation. And I wondered if I really knew my husband at all. The email from James Chun, one of our longest-serving board members, hit me like a punch to the gut. I read it 3 times in my office, each time hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. "Larkin, I feel obligated to inform you about a concerning conversation with Vera Price. She suggested that without proper family oversight of the company's operations, she might need to pursue legal options regarding your father's estate." My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the rest of the message. James had attached screenshots of emails, dozens of them. Vera had been reaching out to board members for weeks, even before Dad's funeral, pushing for positions for both Nolan and Sage. My phone buzzed. "Marin, have you checked your email? You knew about this?" "I just heard from Rita in HR. Vera's been calling department heads too, asking about potential restructuring. She's building a case that you're too inexperienced to run things alone." I closed my eyes, remembering the dinner 2 nights ago. All those subtle hints and careful comments, they weren't just idle talk. They were laying groundwork. "Where's Nolan?" Marin asked. "Parent-teacher conferences." I checked the time. "He should be home soon. Don't confront him alone. I can come over. I need to handle this myself." I heard his key in the door just after 7. He looked tired, his tie loosened, carrying a stack of papers. For a moment, I almost wavered. This was my husband, the man who'd held me through Mom's death, who brought me coffee every morning, who— "Your mother's been contacting the board," I said without preamble. He set down his papers slowly. "Larkin. Did you know?" His hesitation was answer enough. "She's trying to help," he said finally. "We all are. You're under so much pressure. By threatening legal action? By undermining me to my own board. That's not. She wouldn't actually sue. She's just worried about the family's future. Our future." I pulled out my phone, pulled up the emails. "Read them." He did, his face growing paler. "This is just Mom being Mom. You know how she gets." "No. This is your mother trying to force her way into my father's company. And you knew. You've known all along." What was I supposed to do? His voice cracked. "She's my mother. And she's right, I should be doing more. I'm your husband, but I'm just a teacher while you're running this huge company. So this is about your ego? This is about family." He slammed his hand on the counter, making me jump. "Your father's gone, Larkin. The company needs strong leadership. And you think that's you? Or Sage, with her online degree and zero work experience? At least we're thinking about the whole family's needs. You're so caught up in your father's legacy. Because it matters." I was shouting now too. "Because he built something real, something that matters to hundreds of employees and their families. And your mother wants to treat it like a personal ATM. That's not fair." "Then explain it to me, Nolan. Explain why your mother is threatening legal action against her daughter-in-law less than 2 weeks after my father died." He couldn't meet my eyes. "She's just trying to secure our future." In that moment, something shifted between us. Maybe it was the way he said "our," like he and his family were one unit, and I was something else entirely. "I need you to leave," I said quietly. "What?" "Pack a bag. Go to your mother's. I need time to think." "Larkin, don't do this. Either you leave now, or I call Marin and have her come help me pack my things instead." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked upstairs without another word. I listened to him moving around, packing, fighting the urge to run up and tell him to stay, to fix this. But Dad's voice echoed in my head. "Trust your gut, princess. When something feels wrong in business or in life, it usually is." I pulled out his letter, still unopened. Whatever guidance he'd left me, whatever wisdom he'd wanted to share, I was ready to hear it now. Because this wasn't just about the company anymore. This was war. After Nolan left, I finally opened Dad's letter. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper, his familiar handwriting swimming before my eyes. "My dearest Larkin, if you're reading this, I need you to check something for me. In the office safe, behind the Delaney Industries Incorporation papers, there's a blue folder." I was in my car before finishing the letter. The office was dark and empty when I arrived, but I knew every inch of this building. Dad's office still smelled like his aftershave. The safe clicked open. Behind the incorporation papers, just as he'd said, was a worn blue folder. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and a private investigator's report dated 3 months ago. My phone rang, making me jump. "Marin, where are you? I went by your house, but—" Dad knew. I cut her off, my voice hollow. He knew something was wrong. He hired someone to investigate the prices. Silence on the line. Then, what did he find? I spread the papers across Dad's desk. "Vera's broke. She remortgaged her house twice. Sage has maxed out credit cards in 3 different names. And Nolan." My throat tightened. "Nolan's been meeting with corporate lawyers since last year." "What kind of lawyers?" "The kind that specialize in shareholder disputes and inheritance claims." The office door creaked. I spun around to find James Chen standing there, looking grave. "I thought I might find you here," he said quietly. "There's something else you need to know." I put the phone on speaker as James sat down. He looked older than he had at the board meeting last week. "Your father came to me about his suspicions," James began. "He was planning to update the company bylaws, add provisions to protect against hostile takeovers from within the family. But he didn't get the chance, I whispered. The accident. Marin's voice crackled through the speaker. Larkin, you don't think. The police report's in here too, I said, holding up a paper with shaking hands. Dad's brake lines were damaged. They ruled it inconclusive. But James leaned forward. The day before the accident, your father told me he was going to confront Nolan directly. He said he had proof that the Prices were planning something. My world tilted sideways. The photographs scattered across the desk seemed to mock me. Nolan leaving law offices, Vera meeting with board members in secret. Sage's shopping sprees with money she didn't have. I should have seen it, I said. All those times Vera pushed for family unity when Nolan insisted on joining board meetings. You saw what they wanted you to see, Marin said firmly. What matters is what you do now. My phone buzzed with a text. Nolan, Mom wants to meet tomorrow. To talk things through as a family. Please, Larkin, give us a chance to explain. I stared at the message, remembering all the little moments, how Nolan always seemed to know about board decisions before I told him. How Vera had started calling my father's old friends months ago, how Sage had casually mentioned moving closer to the office. They're planning something, I said. This meeting tomorrow, it's a trap. Then set one of your own, Marin replied. James nodded slowly. Your father left you everything for a reason, Larkin. He trusted you to protect his legacy. I looked around the office, at Dad's degrees on the wall, the photo of him teaching me to ride a bike, the empire he'd built from nothing. Then I looked down at the evidence he'd gathered, his final gift to me. Tell Nolan I'll meet them, I said, already formulating a plan. But not tomorrow. I need time to prepare. Prepare what? Marin asked. I gathered the papers, tucking them safely away. Dad taught me that in business, like in chess, you have to think 3 moves ahead. They want to play games? Fine. But they're about to learn they're not the only ones who can set a trap. As I locked the office door, I swore I could smell Dad's aftershave again, stronger this time. Like he was right there with me, watching, waiting to see what I would do next. I chose the conference room overlooking the city for our meeting. Dad always said the view reminded him of how far we'd come, from a tiny startup to the gleaming skyscraper we now occupied. It seemed fitting for what I was about to do. Vera arrived first, perfectly coiffed, and wearing what looked like a new designer suit. Sage trailed behind her, scrolling through her phone. Nolan came last, his tie slightly crooked, a detail I would have fixed just days ago. Darling, Vera started, reaching for my hands. We're so glad you're ready to talk. I stepped back. Please sit down. James Chun and our corporate counsel, Sarah Martinez, entered silently, taking seats at the far end of the table. Vera's smile flickered. I wasn't aware this was a formal meeting, she said carefully. Neither was I, Nolan added, frowning at the lawyers. I opened the blue folder in front of me. Let's talk about Dad's accident. The room went still. Sage finally looked up from her phone. The brake lines were damaged. I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Interesting timing, considering he was planning to change the company bylaws the next day. What are you implying? Vera's voice had lost its warmth. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. I spread out the bank statements, the photographs, the investigators' reports. Like the fact that you're nearly bankrupt. Or that Nolan's been meeting with corporate lawyers specializing in hostile takeovers. Those meetings were about school funding, Nolan protested, but his face had gone pale. Really? Because I have recordings. I pressed play on my phone, and Nolan's voice filled the room. Once we secure board positions, we can start restructuring. My wife won't see it coming. Sage stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. You can't. Sit down. Vera snapped, her mask finally cracking. Larkin, dear, you're obviously struggling with grief. Seeing conspiracies where there's only family trying to help. Help yourselves, you mean? I pulled out more documents. Dad knew what you were planning. He was gathering evidence. And then, conveniently, he had an accident. You think we killed him? Nolan's voice cracked. Your own husband? I think you're capable of anything to get what you want. I turned to Sarah. Please explain their options. Sarah cleared her throat. Option 1. You sign these papers, agreeing to sever all ties with Delaney Industries. You'll receive a one-time settlement in exchange for waiving any future claims on the company or estate. Or, Vera's eyes had gone cold. Or we turn over all evidence of your financial fraud, corporate espionage, and the ongoing investigation into Robert Delaney's death to the authorities. You wouldn't dare, Sage whispered. We're family. Family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family doesn't plot behind each other's backs. Family doesn't try to steal what others have built. And family certainly doesn't celebrate at a funeral. What are you talking about? Nolan asked. I pulled out one final photograph. Vera, Sage, and Nolan toasting with champagne in Vera's kitchen the night after Dad's funeral. Their smiles said everything. You have until tomorrow morning to decide, I said, standing. Choose carefully. You'll regret this, Vera hissed, her composure completely gone. You have no idea what we're capable of. Actually, I do. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Nolan? I've already filed for divorce. Consider yourself served. I walked out, leaving them with the lawyers and their choices. In the elevator, my hands finally started shaking. Maren was waiting in my office. How did it go? I looked out at the city Dad had loved so much. He always said the hardest part of business wasn't making money. It was knowing who to trust. And now I know exactly who to trust. I touched the window, remembering Dad's words about legacy and integrity, and who to destroy. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of red. It felt like an ending and a beginning all at once. Tomorrow would bring either their surrender or war. I was ready for either. The deadline came and went. No signatures. No surrender. Just silence, until my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Turn on the news. Channel 7 was running a special report about Delaney Industries. The headline made my blood run cold. Family fortune or family fraud? Questions arise about Robert Delaney's death. Vera's face filled the screen, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. We're devastated by these revelations, she sobbed. To think that Robert's own daughter might have. The break lines. My phone exploded with notifications. Board members, employees, reporters, all wanting answers. Maren burst into my office. They're saying you tampered with your father's car, she gasped. That you couldn't wait to take control of the company. I couldn't breathe. On my desk, more headlines flashed across my laptop. Sources claim Larkin Delaney expressed frustration with father's leadership. Financial records show unusual transfers days before CEO's death. They planted evidence, I whispered. They're using everything I threatened them with, but twisting it around. My office door opened again. James' chin looked grim. The board's calling an emergency meeting. They're voting on temporary suspension of leadership. They can't do that. I have controlling interests. They're citing the emergency clause. Pending investigation into. He couldn't finish. My phone buzzed. Nolan, it didn't have to be this way. We can still fix this. Meet me at home. Just us. Don't, Maren warned, reading over my shoulder. But I was already grabbing my keys. I had to know why, had to understand how the man I'd loved could do this. The drive home felt endless. Nolan was waiting in our kitchen. Our perfect kitchen where we'd hosted dinner parties and Sunday brunches, where he'd proposed on one knee 5 years ago. You really think I killed my own father? My voice cracked. Of course not. He stepped closer. But Mom, she's desperate. The money problems, Sage's debts. She saw an opportunity. And you just went along with it? I tried to be the bridge between our families. But you never saw me, Larkin. I was just the teacher, the trophy husband who couldn't measure up to the great Robert Delaney's daughter. So you decided to destroy me instead? We can still fix this.
He reached for my hand.
Sign over 40% of the company. Mom will retract her statement. We'll say it was all a misunderstanding, grief making everyone crazy. We can even stay married, keep up appearances. I jerked away. You really think I'd choose you over Dad's legacy? Choose carefully, he said softly. Because if you don't, tomorrow's headline will be about how you're following in your mother's footsteps. How depression runs in families. How tragic it is when history repeats. The threat hit like a physical blow. Mom's suicide had been private, protected. Until now. You wouldn't. Mom would. And does it matter? Once it's out there, the damage is done. The board won't risk a mentally unstable CEO. Sign the papers, Larkin. It's over. My phone buzzed again, James, probably with news of the board's vote. I let it ring. I'll have the papers drawn up, Nolan continued. We can sign tomorrow. Start fresh. I looked around our kitchen, remembering all the lies that had been served here along with family dinners. Remembering Dad's words about trust and legacy. Tomorrow, I echoed, already planning my next move. He smiled, thinking he'd won. I'll tell Mom. She'll be relieved. I walked out without looking back, drove until I reached Dad's favorite spot, overlooking the city. The same view as my office, but somehow clearer now. My phone showed 57 missed calls. The news was still running Vera's tearful interview. Tomorrow, they'd drag Mom's memory through the mud. Unless. I pulled out Dad's letter again, reading past the part about the blue folder to something I'd missed before. Remember, Princess? Sometimes you have to lose everything to see what really matters. I finally understood what he meant, and I knew exactly what I had to do next. I arrived at the office before dawn, Dad's final instructions clear in my mind. By 8, every major financial network was carrying the story. Delaney Industries CEO calls emergency press conference. Vera and Nolan burst into my office just as I finished preparing. What are you doing? Nolan demanded. Exactly what Dad taught me to do. I straightened my jacket. I'm telling the truth. The press conference room was packed. Cameras flashed as I took the podium, Vera and Nolan hovering at the back like vultures waiting for a kill. My father, Robert Delaney, built this company on 2 principles: integrity and transparency. My voice carried clear and strong. Today, I'm honoring both. I nodded to James, who started the video. On the massive screen behind me, security footage began to play. Footage from Dad's private office camera system that he'd never told anyone about, except in his letter to me. The room went silent as they watched Vera and Nolan in Dad's office the night before his death, arguing with him about the company's future. You can't cut us out. Vera's voice rang through the speakers. After everything we've done to position ourselves. I won't let you steal my daughter's birthright. Dad's voice, strong and clear. I know about the debts, Vera. The schemes. It ends now. Nolan's face on the screen was twisted with rage. You think you can just throw us away? We're family. No, Dad replied. You're parasites. The footage cut to later that night, Nolan in the parking garage under Dad's car. The timestamp clearly visible. Gasps filled the room. Reporters were frantically typing on their phones. At the back, Vera's face had gone chalk white. The police have already received this footage, I continued, along with evidence of extensive financial fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. You're destroying your own marriage, Nolan shouted from the back. Everything we built. We built nothing. I cut him off. You plotted and schemed while I actually worked. The only thing you built was a web of lies. Larkin, please. Vera stepped forward, tears already starting. Think about what you're doing to our family. Family? I laughed, and the sound echoed through the silent room. Let me show you what family really means. The screen changed again, this time showing years of secret recordings. Vera and Sage spending company money on luxury purchases. Nolan meeting with corporate raiders. The champagne toast after Dad's funeral. My father knew what you were planning, I said, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. He left me everything I needed to expose you. But first he wanted me to see who you really were. You'll regret this, Nolan snarled, starting forward. Security stepped between us. In the crowd, I could see police officers moving in.
No, Nolan.
You'll regret it. You and your family wanted my company? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Congratulations. You're about to become majority shareholders of your own prison sentences. The officers reached them as reporters shouted questions. Vera was crying for real now as handcuffs clicked into place. Sage, who'd just arrived, screamed as she was detained. Nolan locked eyes with me one last time as they led him away. I did love you, you know. No, I replied quietly. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference. After they were gone, I addressed the press again. Delaney Industries will continue operating with full transparency. Our books are open, our practices ethical, and our commitment to integrity absolute, just as my father wanted. Hours later, after the statements and questions and legal proceedings, I sat alone in Dad's office. The sun was setting over the city he'd loved so much. You were right, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. Sometimes you have to lose everything to see what really matters. My phone buzzed, Marin, sending me headlines from the evening news. Delaney Industries stand strong. Corporate conspiracy exposed and justice served. CEO honors father's legacy. I smiled, touching Dad's nameplate on the desk. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now I had done what needed to be done. I had protected his legacy, not just the company but the principles he lived by. And in doing so, I'd found my own. 1 year later, I stood in the same conference room where I'd exposed Nolan and his family, but everything felt different. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the faces of our employees as I announced the company's new profit-sharing program. My father believed that success should lift everyone, I told them. Today, we're making that belief concrete. After the applause died down and the room cleared, Marin lingered behind. Have you seen the news? I had. Nolan had taken a plea deal, testifying against Vera in exchange for a reduced sentence. Sage had avoided jail time, but was working retail to pay off her debts. And Vera, the mastermind, would spend the next decade behind bars. The house sold yesterday, I said, gathering my papers. Final tie cut. You okay? I considered the question as we walked to my office. The past year had been a blur of rebuilding, not just the company but myself. Every morning, I'd walked past the security footage still saved on my computer, reminding myself that sometimes the people closest to you can be the biggest threats. I visited Mom's grave last week, I said instead of answering. First time since everything happened. Told her about Dad's letter, about how he protected me even after he was gone. And I finally understood something. Mom's depression wasn't weakness, like Vera tried to paint it. She saw things in people that others missed. Maybe that's why she struggled so much. My phone buzzed, a text from James Chun. The board meeting would start soon. But first, I had something to do. Come with me? We took the elevator to the lobby, where a crew was installing new lettering on the wall. The company's mission statement, written in elegant gold. Integrity is not what we do, but who we are. Below it, smaller but just as bright, in memory of Robert Delaney, who taught us that true legacy lives in our actions. He would have loved this, Marin said softly. Yeah. I touched the letters gently. But that's not what I wanted to show you. I led her to my car, drove through the city until we reached a familiar neighborhood. Pulled up in front of a small house with a for sale sign in the yard. Your old house. Marin frowned. I thought you'd never want to see it again. I bought it yesterday. I got out of the car, walked up the familiar path. Not to live in. For this. I handed her a folder. Plans for converting the house into a shelter for women escaping financial abuse. A place where they could learn business skills, rebuild their lives, find their strength. Dad protected me with evidence and security cameras, I explained. But not everyone has that. Some people just need a chance to stand on their own feet. Using your revenge to help others, Marin smiled. Your dad would be proud. It's not about revenge anymore. I looked at the house, where I'd once thought I was building a future with Nolan. It's about making something better from something broken. My phone buzzed again. Time for the board meeting. As we drove back, I thought about Dad's final letter, now framed in my office. About how he'd known I'd face hard choices, but trusted me to make the right ones. You know what's funny? I said as we pulled into the parking garage, a different spot than where Dad had parked that last day. Nolan and Vera thought Dad's legacy was the company, but it wasn't. No. It was learning how to stand up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. I smiled, thinking of the shelter plans, of the profit-sharing program, of all the changes ahead, and then building something better from the ashes. We stepped into the elevator, heading up to face whatever challenges waited next. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I knew exactly who I was and what I stood for. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something they can never touch, never corrupt, never understand. Something that lasts.
Grandma Ruth's hands trembled as she gripped my wrists across the engagement party's elaborately decorated table. Her eyes, usually warm and gentle, burned with an intensity I'd never seen before. The string quartet's melody faded into background noise as she leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "The shadows, Lydia. They linger behind him like hungry wolves. I'm Lydia, and this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life." Instead, my grandmother had just turned my perfect engagement party into something from a Gothic novel. "Grandma, please," I whispered back, conscious of the curious glances from nearby guests. "This isn't the time." "Time is exactly what we're running out of, dear." Her grip tightened. "I've seen what lies ahead. That man, he's not what he seems." The crystal champagne glasses clinked around us as Mason, my fiancé, worked the room with his signature charm. I watched him laugh with my brother Sam, their shoulders touching as they shared some private joke. Mason caught my eye and winked, his perfect smile making my heart flutter despite Grandma's warning. "He's good, isn't he?" Grandma Ruth's words cut through my thoughts. "Making everyone believe. Your brother doesn't see it yet, but he will. The doubt's already there, like a seed waiting to sprout." I pulled my hands away. "That's enough. Mason's done nothing but support me in my business. He believes in me." "Oh, child." She shook her head slowly. "He believes in what you can give him. There's a difference." Mother appeared behind Grandma Ruth, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Mom, you're upsetting Lydia. This is her special day." "Julia, you feel it too. Don't deny it." Grandma turned to face my mother. "The way he looked at Lydia's financial statements last week, like a fox eyeing the henhouse." My chest tightened. "You're being ridiculous. Mason's a financial advisor. Of course he'd be interested in my business records." A little too interested." Sam's voice joined in as he approached our table. His earlier jovial expression had vanished. "Did you know he asked me about your investment portfolio yesterday?" "He's my fiancé," I snapped, louder than intended. Several heads turned our way. "We're planning a future together. These things matter." Nate, my accountant and oldest friend, appeared at my elbow with fresh champagne. His timing was perfect, or terrible, depending on how you looked at it. "Everything okay here?" "Perfectly fine," I said, but my voice cracked. Just my family sharing their delightful opinions about my future husband. Nate's eyes met mine, and I saw something there. Concern, maybe? He'd been oddly quiet since I'd announced the engagement 2 months ago. "The shadows are gathering," Grandma Ruth announced, her voice carrying across nearby tables. "Mark my words, there will be tears before winter's end." Mason chose that moment to return, sliding his arm around my waist. "What's this about shadows?" His laugh was easy, confident. "Surely we're celebrating light and love today." I felt Grandma Ruth's eyes boring into us both. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as she stood, her small frame somehow filling the space between us. "Behind that smile of yours," she said, each word sharp as glass, "there's nothing but darkness. And my Lydia, she's too precious for your games." Mason's arm tightened around me. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand you're protective of Lydia, but—" "No, you don't understand," she cut him off. "But you will. When everything you've built comes crashing down, remember this moment. Remember I saw you coming. She turned and walked away, leaving a wake of whispers and shocked faces. Mother hurried after her, while Sam stood frozen, his expression unreadable. Mason laughed it off, but his hand trembled slightly against my hip. Well, that was dramatic. Shall we cut the cake? I nodded mechanically, but as we walked toward the elaborate three-tiered cake, I couldn't shake the chill that had settled in my bones. Because for just a moment, when Grandma Ruth had made her proclamation, I'd seen something flicker across Mason's face. Fear. And Grandma Ruth had never, not once in her 78 years, been wrong about these things. The morning after the engagement party, Sam cornered me in my workshop. I was sorting through a shipment of raw gemstones, but my hands kept fumbling the pieces. 3 sapphires had already slipped through my fingers, scattering across the wooden workbench. We need to talk about Mason, Sam said, closing the door behind him. If this is about Grandma's performance last night, it's not just that. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. Remember how Mason said he played Division I football at Stanford? I set down a particularly valuable emerald. Of course, he was their starting quarterback for 2 seasons. Funny thing about that. Sam's voice had that edge he used when dismantling someone's financial strategy. I called my college roommate. He's coaching there now. Mason Carter never played for Stanford. Not a single game. The emerald rolled off the workbench. I didn't move to catch it. That's impossible. He has photos. From high school games, if you look closely. Lydia, I've been digging. His investment firm? It's registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. The office address he gave you? It's a virtual workspace that anyone can rent by the hour. My throat felt like sandpaper. You investigated my fiancé? Someone had to. He leaned against my workbench. Did you know he's been asking around about taking out a business loan against your company's assets? The room tilted slightly. He wouldn't do that without discussing it with me first. Wouldn't he? Sam's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. Mason's mother is here to see you. Megan? I hadn't expected to see her until the wedding planning started. Did you tell her where my workshop was? She found it herself. Sam's hand rested on my shoulder. Want me to stay? I shook my head. Whatever this was, I needed to handle it myself. Megan Carter swept in like an autumn storm, all designer clothes and perfectly maintained composure. But something was off. Her hands wouldn't stop fidgeting with her purse strap. Lydia, dear. She didn't quite meet my eyes. We need to discuss Mason. Sam squeezed my shoulder before leaving, closing the door with a soft click that felt oddly final. Is everything all right? I asked, though nothing felt all right anymore. No. Megan's composure cracked. It's happening again, and I won't let another family be destroyed. What's happening again? She pulled out a manila envelope. These are records of Mason's previous engagement, to Caroline Weber 2 years ago. Her family lost everything. My legs gave out. I sank onto my work stool, the envelope heavy in my hands. He convinced her family to invest in a tech startup. Megan continued, her voice hollow. The company never existed. By the time they realized, Mason was gone, along with $3 million. The workshop's walls seemed to close in. Why are you telling me this? Because your grandmother reminded me of Caroline's mother. She had the same suspicions, the same warnings. We ignored her. Megan's eyes filled with tears. I've enabled him for too long, covered his tracks, made excuses. But watching him target you, seeing your family try to protect you, I can't do it anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Mason. Great news about that investment opportunity. Need to meet ASAP. Bringing paperwork. He's already starting, Megan whispered, reading the message over my shoulder. First comes the charm, then the business opportunity, then... The workshop door opened. Mason stood there, his perfect smile faltering as he saw his mother. Mom? His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. What are you doing here? The right thing, finally. She straightened her spine, years of guilt falling away. I'm telling Lydia everything. Mason's smile vanished completely. In that moment, I saw what Grandma Ruth had warned about: the shadows behind his eyes, the darkness beneath the charm. "You really shouldn't have done that," he said softly, and somehow those quiet words carried more menace than any shout. I clutched the manila envelope, my engagement ring suddenly feeling like a shackle. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Or maybe that was just the sound of my world crumbling. Sam's footsteps pounded up the workshop stairs. Mason's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, and I realized with crystal clarity that this was only the beginning of what Grandma Ruth had foreseen. The shadows weren't just lingering anymore. They were closing in. The manila envelope sat unopened on my desk for 3 days. Every morning, I'd trace its edges with trembling fingers, but couldn't bring myself to look inside. Until Nate showed up with that haunted look in his eyes. "We need to talk about your business accounts," he said, setting his laptop down. "Something's wrong." I pushed Caroline Weber's envelope aside. "Define wrong." "Someone's been accessing your financial records. Multiple login attempts from unfamiliar IP addresses." His fingers flew across the keyboard. "And there's this." He turned the screen toward me. A series of pending transactions appeared. Transfer authorizations I'd never seen before. "That's impossible!" I leaned closer. "I never approved these." "They're scheduled for tomorrow morning. 5 separate transfers, totaling just under $2 million. Nate's voice cracked. "To an offshore account." My engagement ring caught the light, mocking me. "Mason has my passwords." "I know." Nate wouldn't meet my eyes. "He called me yesterday, asking about expediting international transfers. Said you were planning to expand the business overseas." The envelope suddenly felt like it was burning through my desk. I ripped it open, documents spilling across my keyboard. Police reports, bank statements, newspaper clippings, all telling the same story. Caroline Weber's family jewelry business, gutted from the inside out. My phone buzzed. Mason's text lit up the screen. "Dinner tonight? Have exciting news about our future." "Call Sam," I told Nate. "And my grandmother. We need—" The office door opened. Mason stood there, earlier than expected, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Sweetheart?" His gaze flickered between me and the scattered documents. "What's all this?" "Funny story," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've been learning about your previous engagement." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mason's smile vanished like it had never existed. "My mother," he said flatly. "She's always been unstable. Whatever she told you. Caroline Weber's father died in prison." I cut him off. "After taking the fall for financial fraud. Fraud you orchestrated." He took a step forward. Nate shifted, placing himself between us. "You don't understand." Mason's voice turned silky. "Caroline's family was already corrupt. I simply exposed what was already there. But you and me, we're different, special." "The transfer authorizations," I said. "Were those special too?" Something dangerous flashed across his face. "Business opportunities require quick decisions. I was only trying to help." "By stealing my life's work?" "By securing our future." He moved closer, that familiar charm sliding back into place. "Think about it, Lydia. With your business acumen and my connections, we could build an empire." "Built on what? Lies? Theft? Built on trust." His hand reached for mine. "Don't let your family's paranoia ruin what we have. Your grandmother, your brother, they're afraid of change, of success." The worst part was, for a moment, I almost believed him. That's when I understood how Caroline Weber's family had fallen for it too. "You're right about one thing," I said, sliding off my engagement ring. "This is about trust." The mask slipped. Just for a second, but long enough to see the coldness underneath. "Don't do anything you'll regret," he said softly. "Too late." I nodded to Nate, who hit a key on his laptop. "I just reversed all those transfer authorizations and copied every suspicious transaction to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." Mason moved so fast I barely saw it, but Sam moved faster, appearing in the doorway behind him. "Touch my sister," Sam said quietly, "and find out what happens next." Mason's laugh was hollow. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "No!" Grandma Ruth's voice carried from behind Sam. "But we're about to find out." She stepped into view, holding a phone. On its screen was a video call with Megan Carter. "I'm sorry, Mason," his mother said. "I've told them everything, about Caroline, about the others. It's over." The shadows Grandma Ruth had warned about weren't just visible now. They were consuming him from the inside out. As Mason's carefully constructed world began to crumble, I saw the truth. Sometimes the most dangerous monsters wear the most convincing masks. And sometimes, the only way to fight darkness is to drag it into the light. Mason vanished after the confrontation, but his ghost lingered in every notification on my phone. 3 days of silence, then a text that made my blood freeze. "Remember that investment contract you signed last month?" I called Nate immediately. Found him already waiting outside my office, pale-faced and clutching a stack of papers. "Tell me you didn't sign anything," he said. My stomach dropped. "It was just a routine business partnership agreement." Mason said, "It wasn't routine." Nate spread the documents across my desk. "This gives him power of attorney over your business assets, and it's dated 3 weeks ago." The room spun. I grabbed the edge of my desk. "That's not what I signed. He showed me something completely different." "Digital document switching." Nate's voice was hollow. "The version you saw isn't the one that got filed." My phone buzzed again. "Mason, let's talk about your options. Dinner at 8? "Don't respond," Grandma Ruth said from the doorway. I hadn't even heard her come in. "He's setting a trap." "I have to do something." My voice cracked. "He could destroy everything I've built." "That's exactly what he wants you to think." She moved to the window, staring out at the gathering dusk. "Fear makes people predictable." My phone lit up with another message, this time from an unknown number. A photo appeared. Security camera footage of Mason entering a law office with a familiar figure. "Is that?" Nate leaned closer. "That's Caroline Weber's father, from 2 days ago." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. "He's working with them now." "Of course he is," Sam said, striding in with his laptop. "Because Caroline's father just got out of prison, and guess who's helping him rebuild his jewelry empire?" I thought of my client list, my supplier connections, everything Mason had access to through that fraudulent contract. He's going to hand them my entire business infrastructure. "Unless," Nate prompted, "unless I buy him out." The words tasted like ash. That's what this dinner invitation is really about. Grandma Ruth turned from the window. "You're not going." "I have to. If I don't—" "If you do, you'll walk right into his endgame." She gripped my shoulders. "Think, child. Why now? Why partner with the very family he destroyed?" My phone buzzed again. Another photo. Mason with Megan at what looked like a private airport. Today's date stamped in the corner. "He's running," Sam said. "The FBI investigation spooked him. This dinner? It's his last play before he disappears." A final message from Mason appeared. "Tick-tock, sweetheart. Some opportunities only knock once." I looked at the contract spread across my desk, at the carefully crafted web of lies that had nearly snared me. Then at Nate's worried face, Sam's protective stance, Grandma Ruth's knowing eyes. "What if—" My voice strengthened. "What if we let him think he's won?" Nate straightened. "You have a plan. Caroline's father wants revenge on Mason as much as I do." I picked up my phone. "And I'm betting Mason never told him about our little FBI investigation." "A trap within a trap," Sam mused. "Risky." "Everything's risky." I started typing a response to Mason. But Grandma's right. Fear makes people predictable. And right now, Mason's running scared. "Be careful," Grandma Ruth warned. "The cornered wolf bites hardest." I hit send on my reply. 8 o'clock. Let's discuss our future." Mason's response was immediate. "That's my girl. The usual place?" I watched the cursor blink. thinking of Caroline Weber's father, of all the other lives Mason had destroyed, of the shadows Grandma Ruth had seen lurking behind his smile. "Yes," I typed. "Time to finish what we started." Nate touched my arm. "You don't have to do this alone." "I'm not." I looked at my family, my real support system. I never was. Outside, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. By 8 o'clock, they'd break. And in their wake, either my business would be in ruins, or Mason would finally face the consequences of his actions. The choice was mine. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't afraid to make it. The restaurant's private dining room felt like a trap, with its dim lighting and closed doors. Mason sat across from me, perfectly composed in his tailored suit, while thunder rumbled outside. The storm had followed me here. "You look tired, sweetheart." He poured wine I hadn't asked for. "Business troubles keeping you up?" I thought of the FBI agent hidden 2 tables away, of Sam watching the back exit, of Nate monitoring every digital transaction from his car. One wrong move could unravel everything. "Actually," I pulled out a check, "I've decided to accept your investment proposal." His eyes flickered, surprise, then triumph. "I knew you'd see reason." $2 million. I slid the check across the table. In exchange for dissolving our contract, Mason's smile didn't waver, but his fingers tightened around his wine glass. "Why the sudden change of heart?" "Let's call it insurance." I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Against any future misunderstandings." The door opened. Caroline Weber's father walked in, right on schedule. Mason's composure cracked for just a second. "Mason!" Mr. Weber's voice carried years of prison-hardened edge. "Quite a coincidence, running into you here." "Robert!" Mason recovered quickly. "I was just discussing business with my fiancé." "Ex-fiancé," I corrected. "And we were actually discussing your pattern of fraudulent contracts." Mason's charm vanished like smoke. "Careful, Lydia. Some doors can't be unclosed." "Like the ones to federal prison?" Robert Weber pulled out a chair. "My daughter sends her regards." "This is a private dinner," Mason said through clenched teeth. "Not anymore." I nodded toward the window, where Megan Carter's silhouette appeared. "Your mother had quite a lot to share about your overseas accounts." Thunder crashed closer. Mason's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, where he'd been keeping a thumb drive with what he thought were my complete business records. "It's gone," I said quietly. "While you were meeting with Robert yesterday, Nate cleared out your office. Amazing what a federal warrant can accomplish." "You're bluffing." But sweat beaded on his forehead. "The contract was invalidated the moment you filed fraudulent documents." Robert Weber's smile was shark-like. "The FBI is very interested in pattern recognition, Mason. First my family, then Lydia's." Mason stood abruptly, his chair scraping against hardwood. "This is harassment. I'm leaving." "No," said a new voice. "You're not." The FBI agent stepped into view, badge glinting. Behind him, Sam blocked the other exit. Through the window, I saw Nate's car pull up, headlights illuminating Megan Carter as she walked toward the entrance. "It's over, Mason." My voice didn't shake. "The only question is how many charges you want to face." He laughed, a hollow, dangerous sound. "You think this ends here? I've got copies of everything. One phone call, and your entire business infrastructure goes public. Every supplier, every client. Already warned," Nate said, entering with a laptop. "They're actually quite interested in testifying about your attempted corporate espionage." Mason's facade finally shattered. The shadows Grandma Ruth had warned about weren't just visible now. They were consuming him, turning his handsome features ugly with rage. "You stupid bitch," he snarled. "I made you, without me." "Without you," I cut him off. "I'm exactly what I've always been, a woman who built something real, unlike you." He lunged, not at me, but at the laptop Nate held. Sam moved faster, tackling him before he reached it. The FBI agent stepped in, handcuffs glinting in the lightning flash from outside. "Mason Carter," the agent began, "you're under arrest for fraud, attempted extortion." I didn't stay to hear the rest. Walking out into the storm felt like breaking through a surface I'd been drowning under. Rain soaked my clothes, but I barely noticed. Grandma Ruth waited by my car, umbrella in hand. "The shadows are lifting," she said simply. "Not yet." I watched through the window as Mason was led away. "There's still the trial, the publicity, the cleanup. But you're not afraid anymore." She squeezed my hand. "That's what matters." Lightning split the sky, illuminating Mason's face as he was placed in a police car. For a moment, our eyes met through the rain-streaked glass. I saw no trace of the man I'd thought I loved, only the monster he'd always been. The storm was breaking, and somehow I knew the worst was finally over. The courthouse steps felt endless as I climbed them, each step heavier than the last. Mason's preliminary hearing should have been a victory. Instead, his last words to me in the restaurant haunted every moment. "You think this is over? I'm taking everything." I hadn't understood what he meant. Not until now. Nate waited at the top, his face ashen. "Lydia, wait. There's something you need to know." But I'd already seen her. Caroline Weber stood by the entrance, her designer outfit a stark contrast to her haunted eyes. Next to her, Mason's mother wrung her hands. "He played us all," Caroline said as I approached. "Even now, he's still playing us." Inside, my legal team huddled around a stack of documents. Sam paced nearby, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in urgent whispers. The air felt thick with defeat. "What happened?" My voice sounded distant, even to myself. "Mason's lawyers filed a countersuit," Nate explained. "He's claiming you orchestrated everything. The fraudulent contracts, the investment schemes, all of it. And he has evidence." "That's impossible." But my hands started shaking. "The FBI has proof." "Fabricated emails," Sam cut in, ending his call. "Dating back months. Messages that make it look like you were the mastermind and Mason was trying to stop you. He must have been planning this from the beginning." Caroline stepped forward. "He did the same thing to my father, created a paper trail that made him look guilty, while Mason walked away clean. By the time we figured it out—" "It was too late," Megan Carter finished. "I'm so sorry, Lydia. I should have warned you he'd do this." The courtroom doors opened. Mason walked out in handcuffs, flanked by his lawyers. But he was smiling, that same charming smile that had once made me trust him. "Last chance, sweetheart," he said softly as they passed. "Drop the charges, and maybe your business survives this." My attorney appeared, clutching more papers. "Ms. Thompson, we need to discuss options. These allegations, they're incredibly detailed. If they stick—" "When?" Mason called over his shoulder. "Not if." I watched him disappear down the hallway, the pieces finally clicking together. Every late-night work session, every time he'd helped with my business records, every moment I'd thought he was supporting my dreams, he'd been building his defense. "The suppliers are already pulling out," Nate said quietly. "3 major contracts canceled this morning. Your reputation—" "Is everything in this business?" I finished. The walls seemed to close in. He knew that. He always knew. Grandma Ruth's voice echoed in my memory. "The shadows are lifting." But she'd been wrong. The shadows weren't lifting. They were drowning me. "We can fight this," Sam insisted. "There has to be something." "Fight with what?" My voice cracked. "He's poisoned every relationship I've built. Even if we win, the damage is done. My business, my reputation—" Caroline touched my arm. "Don't let him win. Not again." But Mason had already won. Every careful step I'd taken to expose him had somehow played into his hands. The very evidence I'd gathered against him was being twisted to destroy me instead. My phone buzzed. Another supplier terminating their contract. Then another. And another. "Lydia!" Nate's voice was desperate. "Look at me! We're not done! There's still—" "Still what?" I pulled away from his reach. "My life's work is imploding. Everything I built, he's taking it all." Through the courthouse windows, I could see reporters gathering. The story was already spreading. Successful businesswoman exposed as fraudulent schemer. Mason's perfect revenge. "I need air," I managed, pushing past everyone. No one tried to stop me. Outside, rain fell again. Or maybe it had never stopped. I stood in it, letting it soak through my court clothes, wondering how I'd missed the truth for so long. Mason hadn't just wanted my money. He'd wanted to destroy me completely. And now, watching my phone light up with more cancellations, more accusations, more evidence of my world crumbling, I realized the true depth of his revenge. He'd made me trust him, love him, believe in our future, all so this moment would hurt more. The shadows hadn't just lingered behind him. They'd been waiting for me all along, and I had walked right into them. 3 days after the courthouse, Nate burst into my workshop, laptop clutched to his chest like a shield. His face held something I hadn't seen in weeks. Hope. "We found it," he said, breathless. "The real paper trail." I looked up from the half-packed boxes of inventory, all that remained of my business. "What are you talking about?" "Mason's mother." He set the laptop down, hands shaking with excitement. "She kept everything. Every email, every transaction, every fake account he created. She's been documenting his schemes for years." The door opened again. Megan Carter walked in, followed by Carolyn Weber and my brother Sam. Each carried folders thick with documents. "It wasn't enough to just confess," Megan said quietly. "You needed proof, real proof." My phone buzzed. Mason's number, right on schedule. "He's coming," Sam said, checking his watch. "Thinks he's here to negotiate dropping the charges." "Are we ready?" Caroline asked, her voice steel-edged. The workshop door opened one final time. Mason stepped in, his lawyer conspicuously absent. His smile faltered when he saw the gathering. "Well," he drawled, recovering quickly. "Quite the reunion." "Sit down, Mason." My voice didn't shake, not anymore. "I'd rather stand." His eyes narrowed at his mother. "Planning another dramatic confession, Mom?" "No," Megan said, "just delivering evidence." Sam moved to block the door. Nate's fingers flew across his keyboard, and suddenly the workshop's walls lit up with projected documents. Years of Mason's carefully hidden paper trail, exposed in glowing detail. "Cute presentation," Mason said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "All easily explained. By the secondary email server you kept in Singapore?" Nate cut in. "The one your mother had access to?" Mason's smile vanished. "You're bluffing." "Like you bluffed about Stanford?" Caroline stepped forward. "Or about the investment firm you never actually registered?" "Or about the offshore accounts?" I added, watching his facade crack. "The ones you used to destroy Caroline's family before targeting mine?" "Everything you built," Megan said softly, "was built on lies I helped you maintain. Not anymore." Mason's charm disappeared entirely, replaced by something cold and dangerous. "You really want to play this game? Fine, release those documents. Watch your precious reputation burn with mine." "My reputation?" I laughed. Actually laughed. "You already destroyed that. But here's what you didn't count on. I don't care anymore." His confidence wavered. "What?" "You can have my reputation, my business, all of it." I stepped closer. "Because unlike you, I can build something real again, something honest." "With what?" he sneered. "Your suppliers are gone. Your clients are right here," Caroline interrupted, pulling out her phone. "Every family you've destroyed over the years. We've been talking, planning, building something new." Understanding dawned in Mason's eyes as Nate projected more documents, business plans, partnership agreements, signatures from dozens of Mason's former victims. "A network," Sam explained, "of people who know exactly who you are, what you do, how you operate." "And this time," Megan added, "we have proof." Mason lunged for the laptop, but I was ready. My hand caught his wrist, the same way he'd once held mine, while sliding on that engagement ring. "The FBI already has everything," I said quietly. "Every document, every scheme, every victim's statement. It's over." "You're lying," but his voice cracked. "No, Mason. For once, Someone in this room is telling the truth. The workshop door opened one final time. The FBI agent from the restaurant stepped in, followed by two others. "Mason Carter," he began. But Mason was already running, straight into Sam's waiting grip. As they led him away, I saw what Grandma Ruth had warned me about all those months ago. The shadows behind him weren't just visible now. They were dissolving, exposed to the light of truth. "Lydia," he called back, desperate. "Don't do this. We can still—" "No," I cut him off. "We can't. Because you never saw me clearly. You saw a target, a means to an end. But I see you, Mason. Finally, I see you completely." The door closed behind him. In the sudden quiet, I felt something shift, not just in the room, but in myself. The weight of his deception lifted, replaced by something stronger. The truth. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I could breathe again. The courtroom emptied slowly after Mason's sentencing, but I stayed rooted to my seat, watching him being led away. 15 years. Not for what he'd done to me, but for all the others before me. The shadows had finally caught up with him. "Ready to go?" Nate's voice was gentle beside me. "Almost." I touched the empty space on my finger where the engagement ring had been. "It doesn't feel real yet." Outside, autumn sunlight painted the courthouse steps gold. Caroline Weber waited with a group of Mason's other victims, now my business partners. Their chatter about our new venture carried on the breeze. "The Weber-Thompson Collective," Sam mused, joining us, "has a nice ring to it. Better than Victims Anonymous," Caroline called over, making everyone laugh. Megan Carter approached hesitantly, clutching her purse. The others fell quiet. "Saya, I've been thinking," she said, "about shadows, about how they grow longer when we feed them with silence." "Mom?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. These past months, she'd become something between a confessor and a surrogate mother. She pressed something into my hand, a small velvet pouch. "The diamonds he stole from Caroline's family. I've been keeping them safe, waiting for the right moment." Caroline's breath caught. "Those were my grandmother's. And now they're yours again." I passed her the pouch. "Maybe we can make something new from them. Something honest." Speaking of new beginnings, Grandma Ruth's voice carried from the courthouse doors. She descended the steps slowly, that knowing smile playing at her lips. "I had another dream last night." "Grandma, please," I laughed. "No more prophecies." "Not a prophecy, a certainty." She pointed toward the street. Like that. A dog, scraggly and thin, trotted up the courthouse steps. It headed straight for me, tail wagging hopefully. "He's been hanging around all morning," Sam said. "No collar, no chip, according to the security guard." The dog pressed against my legs, looking up with eyes that seemed to know everything I'd been through. Without thinking, my hand found his head. "See?" Grandma Ruth's eyes twinkled. The shadows lift, light returns, and sometimes it brings unexpected gifts. Nate knelt beside me, offering the dog his hand to sniff. "He needs a home." "We all do," Megan said softly. "That's why we're here." My phone buzzed. Another supplier, but not with a cancellation. An order, a big one. The first of many, according to Caroline's business plan. "The thing about shadows," Grandma Ruth mused, watching the dog lean into my touch, "is that they can't exist without light. Mason cast a long one, but he couldn't dim your shine." "Not really." The dog's tail thumped against the courthouse steps. Nate's hand found mine, warm and steady. Around us, my unlikely family of survivors talked about future plans, new beginnings, ways to help others spot the shadows before they grew too dark. "You knew, didn't you?" I asked Grandma Ruth. "Not just about Mason, but about all of this." "I knew you'd find your way through." She squeezed my shoulder. "The how of it, that was all you." The dog whined, drawing my attention back. In the sunlight, his coat wasn't scraggly at all, just different, unique, like he'd weathered his own storms before finding his way here. "What should we call him?" Nate asked. "Phoenix," Caroline suggested, "because he rose from nowhere, Just like we will. Too obvious, Sam countered. What about Shadow? I said quietly. Because now we know. They're nothing to be afraid of. Not when you face them together. The dog's tail wagged faster, like he approved. Above us, clouds shifted, changing the patterns of light and shadow on the courthouse steps. But I wasn't watching the shadows anymore. I was watching the people who'd helped me step out of them. My phone buzzed again. Another order, another chance to build something real. Shadow pressed against my legs. Nate's hand squeezed mine, and Grandma Ruth's knowing smile said everything words couldn't. The shadows would always be there. But now I knew. They were just proof of how brightly the light could shine.
Even if you're not the prettiest, celebrate your sister's wedding. The groom is your ex-fiancé, but...
What? I don't have a sister, though.
Huh?
Thomas, my ex-fiancé who left me for my beautiful sister Mia, smugly said this to me. He can't seem to help himself from mentioning his past relationships. Actually, Mia and I are...
What? You're kidding, right?
Seems like he had some misunderstandings, so I decided to tell Thomas the truth. This led to a huge fight between Thomas and Mia right before their wedding. Mia tried her best to calm things down, and they did get married, but I somehow ended up being the center of attention at their wedding, which infuriated Mia. It wasn't my fault, though. Thomas and Mia kept bothering me after their wedding, so I had to set them straight. My name is Natalie, 27 years old, and I work for a company. I had a boyfriend for 6 years. His name is Thomas, 33 years old. Thomas is a stage actor, but unfortunately he's not very successful. We met when I was still a college student. I was invited to a play in which my college friend was performing, and Thomas was also in it. Thomas apparently saw me from the stage and approached me after the show. I was scared at first since he was 6 years older. I still remember that.
You looked so cute from the audience.
Thomas came on strong and I was wary. I'd been called unattractive before, but never cute. My friend protected me then, and I left without giving my contact information. But Thomas later found my social media and messaged me. I rejected him immediately. However, Thomas didn't give up easily and kept bothering my friend for my phone number. I didn't want to trouble my friend anymore. Just when I was thinking about what to do, another message came through social media. Thomas had created another account to contact me. I finally gave in and agreed to dinner just once.
You are more beautiful than any woman I've ever seen.
Please stop. I've never been told that, so I don't know how to react. Thomas was the kind of man who could say such things effortlessly. Throughout that date, he kept complimenting me. My voice, my fingers, my hair, even saying I smelled nice. He complimented everything about me. It was the first time I had met a man like that. As much as it hurt to admit, by the time we parted, I found myself wanting to see him again. I lacked self-confidence. I was abandoned in 2nd grade and raised in an orphanage. I never felt at home from the moment I became aware of my surroundings. My mom never praised me, always saying, "I wish you were never born." So I thought I was unworthy of love. I probably just wanted someone's approval. Thomas filled that need in just one day. By then, I think I was already falling for him. We started dating naturally after he asked me out a few more times. However, Thomas, who had once filled my need for approval, changed over 6 years.
You're the girlfriend of an actor, right? At least put on makeup when you're outside.
I am wearing makeup.
Really? With makeup like that? Aren't you aging too fast?
Thomas had started to criticize my appearance, and he had ulterior motives for dating me.
I'm kind of in a pinch this month.
Again? The month just started.
Well, it's important for an actor to socialize, right?
He calls himself an actor, but it's self-proclaimed. He hasn't had any stage work in a year. He's barely working part-time jobs and often skips work. I want you to pay back what you owe me.
Why? We're going to get married, aren't we? You don't have to pay me back.
I was 27 and vulnerable to the word marriage. But I had been hearing this from Thomas for the past 3 years. Deep down, I knew Thomas had no intention of marrying me, but he was all I had. I thought I would never meet someone else who would accept me. That's how I felt. And so I ended up lending money that I knew wouldn't come back even on this day.
Oh, and by the way, you entered my apartment when I wasn't there, right?
Yeah, I did.
Don't do that anymore.
Why? You used to let me in normally.
My actor friends might be staying over. I don't want you to be attacked by them. They're frivolous guys, you know. So always contact me before coming to my place.
Okay. 6 months ago, he took my spare key, and now he's telling me to contact him before coming over. It felt like a step back from marriage. I knew he hid a key under the doorbell, so I occasionally used it to sneak in for cleaning, laundry, or cooking. He never said anything before, so why now? Maybe he didn't like it. My anxiety grew. Recently, I started confiding in a senior colleague at work about Thomas. His name is Joseph, 30 years old. Joseph noticed the scant filling in my sandwich and expressed his concern. I was eating in a hidden spot because I was embarrassed, but he noticed, and I felt even more embarrassed.
Our company doesn't pay that badly, right?
I'm just saving money. My evasion was quickly seen through, and I ended up talking about Thomas. Talking about it surprisingly cleared my mind, and since then I often sought advice. But recently,
you should break up with that guy as soon as possible, I was told bluntly.
I know I should, but I can't bring myself to leave Thomas. It's embarrassing. I finally decided it was time to take a stand. I told Thomas I wanted to talk when he visited my house.
What's up? I'm starving here.
Thomas came over for food and money. With that in mind, I gathered my courage and spoke. Don't you think it's time we start thinking about our future after 6 years together?
The future?
Thomas looked genuinely displeased. I felt I shouldn't waste any more time. If you can't see a future with me, let's break up.
What?
I want to break up with you. Your stuff is packed. Take it with you. I'll pick mine up tomorrow. When I said this, Thomas suddenly panicked.
Wait, is this some kind of joke?
I'm serious. Seeing my earnest face, Thomas grasped my hand suddenly.
Okay, let's get engaged.
What?
Wait for the ring. I don't have the money right now.
I don't need a ring. I received an unexpected proposal from Thomas.
Natalie, will you marry me?
Thomas made a ring from a straw and placed it on my finger. I was so surprised that I started to cry. Are you serious?
Of course. I love you, Natalie. I don't want to lose you.
I believed his words completely. I was over the moon thinking Thomas was really considering marrying me. So we were officially engaged. The world around me seemed to change. It was as if a fog had lifted. I spent the next few days in bliss. I even forgot something at Thomas's house because I was so elated. It was an important document I needed for work the next day. I decided to go get it without contacting him, as it was an audition day. I thought he wouldn't notice as I was picking up the document and would leave immediately. Besides, we were now engaged. I interpreted the situation differently than a few days ago. I went to get the key, but it wasn't in its usual spot. Then I heard voices inside. At first, I thought it was his actor friends visiting, but it seemed different. The reason was that lewd voices were audible even from outside. It was definitely Thomas's voice. Curiosity got the better of me, and I gently turned the doorknob. It was unlocked.
Aren't you going to tell her soon? Yeah, might as well milk her for more money before dumping her, right?
Bad boy. They were undoubtedly talking about me. I was convinced that Thomas was cheating and burst into the house. They were on the bed. What is the meaning of this? I expected Thomas to be flustered, but instead he got angry.
I told you to call before coming. Why did you just show up?
The woman looked at me with a smug smile. Even as the situation was exposed, the woman calmly dressed without panic. I looked at her face and realized I recognized her. It's been a while, Natalie. How do you know my name? Oh, you forgot? Unpleasant memories are hard to forget, even when you want to. My brain brought back those memories. This was from before I went to the orphanage, back in the house where I was mistreated by Mom. There was another girl there. Her name was Mia, 3 years younger than me. The girl in front of me was indeed that girl from back then. Mom adored Mia. As a child, Mia was cute and smart, a quick learner, and Mom's pride. Watching Mia like that, Mom judged me as a failure because I was always slower. Moreover, I apparently looked like Dad, whom Mom hated for leaving her. Mia always watched me being mistreated by Mom with a sarcastic smile. That face from then overlapped with her face now. Mia, now 30, was indeed more beautiful, retaining traces of that girl.
When I heard you were her sister, I was shocked. You two look nothing alike. You're ugly.
What? But Thomas, you said I was cute.
Huh? I don't remember saying that.
Be careful. She's always been a pathological liar.
Really? That's scary.
Their laughter triggered more memories. Mom and Mia often laughed at me like that. I left the place as if running away. My breathing became erratic, not just because I was running. For those 6 years, I believed in Thomas's words. Thomas was the only one who accepted me. But now, betrayed, I was lost. Everything turned dark. The next day, I told Joseph about it. He listened in silence. As I spoke, I calmed down and clearly realized that the engagement was also a lie. And finally, I understood that there was no point in staying with Thomas. The next day, I contacted Thomas to demand repayment of the money.
That was something you lent me because you wanted to. Why should I repay?
It was under the promise of marriage. Now that it's off, it's only fair you pay me back.
No way. I don't intend to pay you back. There's no proof you lent me anything, so I don't owe you.
In the end, I couldn't get the money back. I had no choice but to give up. We had been together for 6 years, but never lived together. If we had cohabited for 6 years, I might have been able to claim as common-law wife, but that wasn't our case. Instead, I had initially given him money, so I couldn't demand repayment. Hiring a lawyer was an option, but that would cost more money.
Don't show up in front of me again. Mia doesn't like it.
You took so much of my time. I can't forgive you.
Yeah, don't forgive me. It's fine.
Thomas waved me off as if shooing away a stray cat. Months passed. I was trying to recover from the heartbreak by immersing myself in work. Focusing on something helped me forget. I worked late that day, and when I got home, I found a wedding invitation in my mailbox. Wondering who it could be, I opened it up, and it was from the 2 people I most wanted to forget. An invitation to the wedding of Thomas and Mia. They even included a photo of themselves, probably just in my envelope. I was about to throw the invitation in the trash when the phone rang, perfectly on cue. The number was Thomas's, which I remembered even though it wasn't saved. What do you want?
Don't sound so scary, jeez.
If you don't have anything to say, I'm hanging up.
Wait, you're so impatient. Come to our wedding, will you?
As I suspected, that was the topic. I was exasperated. Why should I attend the wedding of my former fiancé? While I was thinking about how to end the call quickly.
Even if you're ugly, you should celebrate your sister's wedding. The groom is your ex-fiancé, but...
What? I don't have a sister, though.
Huh?
Then Thomas burst into laughter. I didn't understand what was so funny.
That was at my house the other day.
You're talking about Mia. I know that.
Then don't tell such pointless lies about not having a sister.
I'm not lying. Thomas started to get irritated. I realized I might have to explain properly, as this was going nowhere. We're not family anymore, so I have no obligation to attend the wedding.
I've set up a seat for you. What, don't you want to see Mom, who abandoned you?
It's not like that, okay? I'll tell you. Actually, Mia and I are not blood related. Mia is the daughter of my mom and her previous husband. I was Dad's child from another relationship, but Dad left Mom and abandoned me too, so I have no blood relation with Mom either. For a while, Mom kept me around as an excuse for Dad to come back, but after 2 years, I became a nuisance. That's when I was taken to the orphanage. So I have no blood relation to Mia.
But you have the same last name.
That's because Dad and Mia's mom divorced right after she started elementary school, and she was raised without changing her name. So Mia's mom has a different surname. Thomas finally seemed to understand. So I have no reason to attend the wedding. I'm not family.
I wasn't told about this.
That's your problem, not mine. Thomas had believed I was Mia's real sister. Probably Mia had fed him lies about me, too. When did you first see Mia?
About half a year ago.
That long? So you've been cheating for half a year?
Yeah, well, let's forget about it. It's in the past.
Realizing it had been going on for so long made me almost explode with anger. It was bad enough to be deceived, but I couldn't stand that Thomas easily trusted someone he met only 6 months ago over me, after 6 years together. I felt my feelings for him cooling off. I'm glad you called today, thank you.
What's this? Thanking me? Creepy.
It helped me lose all feelings for you.
What's that supposed to mean?
Why had I needed Thomas so much until now? It wasn't that I loved Thomas. I was just happy to be acknowledged by someone. I finally realized that. Proof of this was that even when Thomas was deceived by Mia, I felt nothing. I couldn't bring myself to think of helping him, no matter what happened next. If you can't sympathize with someone, it's not love or anything else. I'm just a stranger to all of you now, so please don't contact me again. I said that, ended the call, and blocked his number. However, a few days later, Mia appeared in front of me. She caught me as I was leaving work, probably having asked Thomas from my workplace. You said unnecessary things to Thomas. I just told him the truth because he seemed to think that we were real sisters. Thanks to you, I'm being called a liar now. After our call, Thomas repeatedly tried to call me back. Mia saw him doing this, and when she asked what was wrong, he suddenly lashed out, saying,
"This liar woman! You embarrassed me because of her!"
After hearing this, Mia apologized. She managed to calm Thomas down and avoided a broken engagement. Still, I couldn't understand why she wanted to marry Thomas so badly. You made things difficult for me by saying unnecessary things. That's a natural consequence, isn't it? I don't care. You always act so cool about everything I do. Be more upset. Excuse me? Mia suddenly expressed her anger at me. Her face was filled with fury. I didn't understand, so I asked her to explain, and she started talking. When I was a child, apparently Dad favored me. Sadly, I don't remember that. Probably Mom used me to get Dad's attention, but to Mia, it felt like I was taking her mom away. So Mia worked hard in her studies and was well behaved to get attention. But still, Dad seemed to favor me. She couldn't stand that. But when Dad left, Mom suddenly turned cold towards me. To Mia, that felt comforting. She found pleasure in seeing Mom mistreat me and me getting hurt. But when you went to the orphanage, I missed seeing that and felt bored. Then one day, about 20 years later, Mia saw me walking happily with Thomas. Hearing Thomas call me cute was unbearable for her. I can't stand you being happier than me. That's when Mia decided to steal Thomas from me. She approached Thomas, claiming to be my sister, and seduced him with her beauty. Mia explained this all triumphantly, but hearing it, I just felt pity for her. You must be really bored. What did you say? Well, isn't it true? You've been holding on to this for 20 years since I left home. That's a huge waste of time. Mia was furious at my words. She lunged at me. Joseph, who happened to come out, saw this. He rushed over to us. What are you doing? Joseph stood protectively in front of me. Mia looked at him, surprised, and suddenly quieted down. Natalie, who's this? He's a senior colleague from work. Mia then started to look unsettled, probably because Joseph was handsome. I'm Mia, her sister. Sister? Actually, I have a wedding coming up, but my sister says she won't come. That's causing me some trouble. Then Joseph, as if pondering, said something unbelievable to Mia.
Can I attend that wedding too?
What? Of course you're welcome. I'll reserve a seat for you.
Please, make sure my seat is next to Natalie.
Joseph said this with a smile, and Mia's eyes turned completely into hearts. After Mia left, I complained to Joseph, but he just winked at me, saying he had a plan. I was amazed to see how self-centered the men around me were. And then, the day of the wedding arrived. I never intended to go, but there I was, attending. I had no idea what Joseph was thinking, completely baffled. I entered the wedding venue filled with anxiety. The wedding was garden party style, standing reception. There were no specific seats, so I stood far from the relatives. To my surprise, Joseph perfectly escorted me. Thanks to him, I avoided strange looks, and the relatives and Mia's friends who were talking behind my back were distracted by Joseph. I then reunited with Mom after a long time. Mom looked awkward, but when Joseph spoke to her, she was as smitten as Mia. She seemed to mistake him as my boyfriend. She grimaced with envy and glared at me. That's when I realized Joseph was a popular guy. During the wedding, while mingling, Mia, now the wife, came to us. "Thank you for coming today. You too, Joseph." "It's a pleasure to be invited." "By the way, Joseph, did you know the groom is actually Natalie's ex-fiancé?" Mia started saying this proudly, as if Joseph didn't already know. "And Natalie sometimes lies, so please don't be too hard on her." "What are you saying?" Scary, stop it. Today is my wedding, you know. Don't raise your voice like that. Everyone will be surprised. See, she can't even control her emotions." Then Joseph sighed deeply. I was shocked, thinking that sigh was directed at me. I was torn between wanting to believe he understood me and fearing betrayal like with Thomas. "Really? That's unfortunate." Joseph said that, and Mia gave me a smug smile. "Poor Natalie, having such an embarrassing sister." "What?" "You should be enjoying the wedding instead of just worrying about your sister." "Excuse me?" "I don't believe others' words. I know Natalie best. I've been watching her since she joined the company." People gathered around us. Even Thomas came over, curious about the commotion. "What's going on?" "Oh, the groom. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" "For finally breaking up with Natalie. It gave me a chance." Then Joseph suddenly confessed to me. He fell in love at first sight when I joined the company, gave up because I had a boyfriend, but couldn't let go and had been in love for 5 years. I was surprised too. "Hey, don't do whatever you want at my wedding." "That's true. Then we'll take our leave," Joseph said and took my hand, leading me away from the scene. Everybody left behind was stunned. The video of Thomas and Mia being cozy, probably meant to show off to me, went unnoticed, as the guests were more excited about the confession they had just witnessed. I could easily imagine Mia causing a scene during the rest of her wedding. Even Mom said, "Mia, why don't you marry someone like Joseph?" Furious, Mia called me that night. "You're on the phone with me on your wedding night?" "Shut up! I have to give you a piece of my mind. You invited me. That doesn't mean you can interfere." "I didn't interfere." Mia was completely enraged, cutting off my words with her anger. "Just leave me alone, will you?" "I'm not bothering you." "I know it's frustrating, but constantly comparing yourself to others is pointless. What do you know about it?" "I don't, but it's ridiculous to marry a man you don't even love to see me lose something. Ever thought about how you're wasting your life?" I could tell Mia was stunned by my words. She hung up without saying anything. It must have been quite a shock to her. For Mia, who had always lived comparing herself to others, this might have been a chance to finally face herself. I hope she lives her life for herself, not just to belittle others. After that, Mia never contacted me again. Mia, having gone through with the wedding, couldn't divorce right away. Plus, the wedding expenses were paid by Mom. She had to repay them. So Mia tried to collect the money from Thomas. "Pay half the wedding expenses." "What? You think I have that kind of money?" "But you promised!" "I told you I didn't want a wedding in the first place." In the end, Thomas didn't pay her back, and their marriage continued for a while. Thomas didn't work, and Mia supported the household. But Mia, not one to be dictated to, finally snapped after 6 months and presented Thomas with divorce papers. "I can't stand this life anymore." With that, she left. So now Thomas, hearing this whole story, has reappeared in front of me. It was a cold winter day. Thomas was waiting at the nearest station to my company. She left me, you know. It's clear now. The only one who can support my acting career is Natalie. Let's start over. Talk in your sleep. What? Thomas still seemed to think I had feelings for him. Once awakened, it's clear how pathetic he is. I feel sorry for having clung to such a man for 6 years. Look, when are you going to stop talking about being an actor? It's pathetic. You know you're not successful. What's gotten into you? You're not even trying. No woman will devote herself to such a man anymore. I've finally woken up thanks to you leaving me, so thank you. Wait a minute! Thomas blocked my way and began a deep apology. I was surprised. I never expected Thomas, so full of pride, to apologize deeply. Stop it, right here in public? Please, let's start over. I'll treat you right this time. Do you think I can trust those words? Please, I don't want to be alone. At first, I thought he wanted to reconcile just to sponge off a woman, but he also seemed to fear loneliness. After being abandoned by Mia, Thomas was alone, having been shunned by his acting friends for years and without any real friends. He had been disowned by his family when he left home to pursue acting and couldn't return home, and he was fired from his job for repeated absences. Fearing true solitude, he became desperate. But hearing this story didn't make me want to forgive him. Moreover, sorry, but I'm engaged. I took off my glove and showed him my engagement ring. After Thomas and Mia's wedding, Joseph asked me to date with marriage in mind. Engaged? You're lying. It's true. I'm sorry. That guy? Don't go with him. Do you have the right to say that? Thomas seemed lost for words. Forget about me. With that, I left. Thomas sat down, stunned. Since then, Thomas has never appeared before me again. Afterwards, Mia returned home, but spent her days being scolded by Mom as shameless. Unable to defy Mom and needing to repay the wedding expenses, Mia worked at a local company for a low salary. Fuming with anger and wondering why she alone had to suffer this fate, Mia contacted Thomas again. Thomas seemed happy at first that Mia had returned, but was disappointed when she demanded payment for the wedding expenses. However, upon being told that she would reconsider their relationship if he paid off the wedding costs, Thomas started working 2 jobs. From what I heard, Mia had no intention of reconciling and was merely using Thomas. I felt no obligation to tell him, so I let them handle it themselves. I had begun planning my wedding to Joseph. With Joseph, I could debate and share joys as he respected my opinions. Our relationship at work remained the same. I managed to continue as normal, but Joseph seemed to find it a bit difficult as things had changed between us. Therefore, I decided to resign when we got married. This was not to accommodate Joseph. This was my own decision. I had always wanted to pursue a certain career, so I decided to go back to school and chase that dream. Being able to openly discuss this was possible only because of Joseph. Of course he was supportive. Joseph accepted me as I am, making me feel very comfortable. He didn't overpraise me, but simply acknowledged me, which I realized made me very happy. My life is just beginning. I'm determined to live it fully and authentically.
I've wanted kids, but it's your fault I've had to hold back. You're defective. My husband of 20 years threw these cruel words at me. I realized I couldn't carry on with him. He's off daydreaming about his new marriage. God must have been watching, witnessing this devilish act. That's why something happened to my husband. My name is Lisa. I'm 45 years old. I work as a secretary at a law firm. We're nearing 20 years of marriage. We've led a modest life, just the 2 of us. We've always wanted children, but we couldn't have any. The problems seemed to be mostly with me. I went for treatments while working, exhausting myself physically, emotionally, and financially, but to no avail. We decided to give up when I turned 40. My husband wanted kids till the end and urged me to continue treatments, but I was at my limit. The pain was unbearable, and the money was just draining away. The situation was terrifying. After all, they say you need $200,000 for retirement. It felt wasteful to pour more money into it. Why don't we stop the treatments and just live as a couple? We can save money and take some luxurious trips since we don't have kids, I suggested, and my husband, albeit reluctantly, agreed. From then on, we decided to enjoy our lives as a couple. Still, seeing children's photos on TV shows or greeting cards, I felt a twinge of regret. Even now, 5 years after stopping treatments, I carry guilt and remorse for not being able to have children. Then, one day, I decided to attend a school reunion after about 10 years. My husband said I should take a break, so I decided to stay overnight near the venue. It felt like a mini vacation. I realized I'd hardly ever been out alone since we got married. My life had been consumed by infertility treatments. A little luxury now and then is okay, right? At the venue, I enjoyed catching up with old friends. "Lisa, long time no see. How are you? Don't you seem a bit slimmer than before?" Indeed, I had lost about 22 pounds over the last decade. "I'm so jealous. Since I got married and had kids, I've gained almost 33 pounds. Even such a trivial conversation from a friend stings a bit. "Lisa, any kids?" "No, we couldn't. It's just the two of us with my husband." "Oh, I'm sorry for asking such an awkward question." "No worries. Let's just have fun." I tried to keep the atmosphere lively and cheerful. Speaking of which, my son was recently almost caught up in a marriage scam. A scam? I was taken aback by my classmates' words. Yes, he was asked to lend $20,000 because they were getting married, but it didn't go through. What? What happened then? My son couldn't afford to pay that much money, so he came to us, his parents, for advice. That's how we discovered the scam. In the end, the woman disappeared. That's a terrifying story. There are some pretty awful women out there, really scary. A marriage scam. I was a bit shocked that something like that could happen so close to home. Her son now has a new girlfriend, and the parents seemed relieved. The reunion went on smoothly and eventually came to an end. Instead of going to the after party, I returned to my hotel and enjoyed a nightcap by myself. Come to think of it, I forgot to check in with my husband. It was only 10 p.m., he should still be up. I tried to call home, but no matter how many times I let it ring, my husband didn't answer. Maybe he had already gone to sleep. Well, I was going back tomorrow anyway, so it wasn't a problem. Still, I had an uneasy feeling. Was it a woman's intuition? I had a bad feeling for some reason. From then on, my husband started coming home extremely late on weekdays, and he started coming home drunk almost every night. "Hey, I'm home." "You, coming home so drunk. Are you okay?" In a drunken stupor, my husband threw his shoes off and sprawled out on the living room floor. "Shut up, I'm home. Show some respect." Respect for what, exactly? His slovenly state? While picking up my husband's discarded socks and shirt, I kept my thoughts to myself. Alyssa was cute, wasn't she? You know, if you were as young as Alyssa. That's what my husband said. Who the hell is Alyssa? What does he mean if I were young? By the time I thought to question him, he was already fast asleep. Could he be cheating on me? My unease from that day was becoming more and more like conviction. No, my husband is a decent man. There's no way he could. It must be drunken nonsense, I reassured myself. But then there's my husband who leaves early in the morning on weekends and doesn't return until late at night. "I'll be back later. Take care." And then he comes home drunk, as always. With this happening every week, even I had to intervene. "You seem to be going out drinking almost every day recently. Are we okay financially?" "Mind your own business. It's my money and I'll do what I want with it. It's the savings from my bachelor days." "But we need to save up for our old age or we'll be in trouble in the future." "Why don't you save up then?" "Well, I've spent quite a bit on treatments." "That's because you're defective." Even if he was drunk, I couldn't believe he'd speak to me that way. I was starting to notice my husband's changes. Did I become more submissive since I stopped treatment? My husband's disparaging remarks about me were increasing. Since you can't have kids, you should show your affection for me instead. And with that, I could feel my love for him diminishing as he splurged and behaved selfishly. He used to be so kind, caring for me when I was having a hard time with treatments. Will he ever return to being that kind of husband? What is a marriage, really? After 20 years, I started to question this. However, things took a sudden turn. Lisa, we need to talk. I came home from work to find my husband sitting on the living room sofa looking serious. What is it? You're being all formal. I want a divorce. What? You're joking, right? Why would you say that all of a sudden? The thought that my husband was considering a divorce had never crossed my mind. Yes, I knew we had to reconsider our relationship as a married couple, but I hadn't thought about divorce. Was my husband thinking of divorce before I even considered it? Out of the blue, you want a divorce? What's going on? I confronted my husband, seeking answers. We've been a couple for 20 years, haven't we? Let's discuss this properly. However, he looked at me with contempt. You're really clueless, aren't you? He sighed heavily, glaring at me. What do you mean? I've always wanted children for these past 20 years. And because I got stuck with a defective piece like you, I've been robbed of the opportunity to become a father. Have you ever considered my feelings? As he spoke, he pounded the table with an arrogant tone. That's not fair. We discussed together and decided to stop the treatments, remember? I was never okay with that. I've always wanted a child. Why hadn't he told me that then? I was on the verge of tears, overwhelmed by sadness and frustration. Well, if you sign the divorce papers, I won't have anything else to say. Proudly, he pushed the divorce papers on the table towards me. I've actually already decided to remarry. What? Remarry? Yeah, with a 20-year-old girl. A girl? Are you saying you've been having an affair? No way. I plan on marrying her as soon as we're divorced. He announced this with a smug satisfaction. A 20-year-old girl was marrying my husband? This couldn't be happening. Alyssa, she's sweet and cute. The perfect wife. Not like you. Alyssa. That was the name my husband had mentioned that day. Woman's intuition was not to be underestimated. I felt a sense of self-satisfaction, but this wasn't the time for self-praise. And then my husband showed me a picture of his adorable Alyssa. Upon taking a closer look, I nearly burst out laughing. This has to be a joke. Something like this was impossible. What? He noticed my strange reaction, but I quickly regained my composure. I felt it was too soon to let him in on the joke, so I immediately composed myself. So you really want a child that badly? Yes, because you can't give birth. There's nothing we can do about that, right? You will agree to divorce, won't you? Well, I suppose there's no choice. I pretend to look more upset than I really am. Sure, I was upset when he first brought up the divorce, but now, with his sheer stupidity, I feel like it would be right to divorce him immediately. Yes, I should leave a man like this sooner or later. I feel as if I've been given divine guidance to do so. I sign the divorce papers and leave my husband behind. I'll bet he'll regret this soon enough. Well, let's just watch and see. Fast forward a year after the divorce. Lisa, please help me. A shabby-looking man approaches me on my way home from work. Excuse me, who are you? I genuinely don't recognize him. It's me, Lisa. I need your help. It's my ex-husband. Long time no see. I'm taken aback by how much he's changed. His cheeks are sunken, and he's dressed shabbily. Please, Alice, introduce me to your company's lawyer. I can't just do that out of the blue. Apparently, my ex-husband is having money troubles. I could sort of tell from his appearance, but I never thought he would become a completely different person within a year. If it's your first time, consultation is free. Free? But if you want to hire them, you'll have to pay their fee. I don't have that kind of money. Please, help me. What on earth happened? I decided to listen to his story at a nearby cafe out of pity. Well, actually, Before he could say another word, I cut him off. Did that girl, Alyssa, run off? How did you know? Just as I thought. When my ex-husband showed me a picture of a girl named Alyssa, it clicked. That girl looked exactly like the one who conned a classmate's son at a reunion. At that reunion, the classmate was saying, "I can't forgive that woman," and showed her picture around, warning everyone. I think her name was Sally and she was about 22. Well, her age and name are probably fake. It makes sense. The swindler wouldn't use her real name, of course. You knew about Alyssa, didn't you? Well, I guess you could say I knew, but what happened? When I asked my husband for the details, this was the story he gave. He met a woman named Alyssa about a year ago in a nightclub. My husband, who has always wanted children, seemed to have been venting such thoughts in his conversations with her. That's when Alyssa said, "I can have a child for you." The two gradually deepened their relationship after that. My husband would go to the club almost every weekday and would date Alyssa outside the club on weekends, then return to the club. In doing so, he ended up using $10,000 from his savings that he had accumulated when he was single. But Alyssa was so sweet. She never asked for expensive things even when we were outside the club. She was just happy drinking with me at the club. She was different from the stereotypical opportunistic club girls you often hear about. She didn't need designer goods or jewelry. She was satisfied if I was there drinking with her at the club. She was hardworking and sincere. We had agreed not to touch each other's savings from when we were single, so I never noticed anything. I thought it was his money and he could use it as he pleased. I had no idea he was spending that much. And then Alyssa showed her true colors. "I want to get married, but I have debts, so I need to repay them, and it's about $20,000. Then my husband promised to take on Alyssa's debt and transferred the money to her. They moved in together right after our divorce, but Alyssa continued her night work and rarely came home. And then she quit her job at the club and disappeared. Of course, she took all the money and ran. Just how foolish can he be? I started to feel pathetic for having been married to such a man for 20 years. Did you make a promissory note? A what? When I asked, my husband looked puzzled. You lent her money, didn't you? Didn't you get a note? We were going to be a couple, so I didn't do such a thing. Really? So doesn't it mean you just gave her the money? Is that so? In this case, it seems like you donated $20,000 to Alyssa out of goodwill. This woman must be a pro. In the case of donations, if the amount exceeds $11,000 in a year, gift tax is imposed. Depending on the case, the receiver might be taxed, so Alyssa just took $20,000 in cash and vanished. And she split the money into 2 parts across 2 different years. That way, she wouldn't exceed the $11,000 limit and could avoid taxes. The reason my husband thought she was a good girl who never asked for material gifts was because she knew the law well. So what should I do? I don't know, maybe consult a lawyer? It'll cost you, though. Upon hearing that, my husband's shoulders slumped. I've used up all my savings from my single days. The woman I loved ran away from me. I can't tell the company that the marriage is off after I've already told them about remarrying. I boasted about getting a younger wife. Isn't that his own doing? Although I thought that, seeing his pitiful situation, I couldn't say anything. Lisa, it's my fault. Please, come back to me. I realized after you were gone, you were the only one who cared about me. I don't need kids anymore. I'll let you do as you like. You must have been lonely too, right? Does my husband still misunderstand that I still love him? That matter ended half a year ago in my mind, so I confronted him with reality. You know, it's been a year. What's with this sudden change of heart? Isn't it a little too late now? Lisa, are you going to abandon me? Well, it was you who pushed for our divorce in the first place, remember? Lisa, you're the only one I can rely on. My ex-husband looked utterly exhausted. I decided to show him a little mercy. All right then, shall I call up a lawyer friend of mine? Lisa, thank you. I knew I could count on you. With tears welling up in his eyes, My ex-husband seemed genuinely grateful, and the one who came to the coffee shop was Mr. Johnson, the lawyer from my company. "John, over here." "Lisa, who's this?" "He's an acquaintance. Seems he's in a bit of a bind." "Is that so? Nice to meet you. The name's Johnson." My ex-husband seemed somewhat perplexed by our overly familiar demeanor. "You see, we've been dating for the past 6 months. Now what was it you needed advice on?" As I finished speaking, my ex-husband looked as if he was in a daze. "No, well, I think that'll be it for today." Suddenly snapping back to reality, my ex-husband hurriedly left the coffee shop. In the end, he couldn't afford to hire a lawyer, and resigned himself to his fate. Rumor has it that his company has been abuzz with talk of his unfortunate situation, left by his soon-to-be wife, ignored by his ex-wife. It's a small world. Who would have thought that one of his colleagues was at the same coffee shop, overhearing the entire conversation from start to finish? I heard through the grapevine that he's frantically trying to find a new partner, terrified of facing old age alone. Who was that guy? When Mr. Johnson asked me about it later, I told him the whole story. "I'm sorry for involving you in all this. The truth is..." "I see. You've had quite the ordeal, Lisa." The part about me dating Mr. Johnson was a complete lie. I had asked him to play along with the charade. "Sorry for all the trouble." "No worries, Lisa. I'm glad I could be of help. By the way, do you have any plans after this?" "Excuse me?" "How about grabbing something to eat if you'd like?" Caught off guard by this unexpected turn of events, I was a little flustered. A fresh start in my mid-40s. This isn't such a bad beginning. "Yes, I'd love to." I was certain a fun-filled future was awaiting me. I couldn't shake off this feeling.